Okay guys, today we're going to start with the geography review. Georgia's Geography and Climate, Standard SS 8G1. What is geography? It is the nature and relative arrangement of places and physical features. You know here in Georgia that different areas have different names, they have different physical features, and we will learn about all of those. Climate, it's weather over a long period. Weather is what you experience day to day. Over a long period of time, that is what makes it climate. Our climate here is humid subtropical, hot summers, which we're used to, and mild winters, even though it's a little colder than mild right now. Georgia has a large amount of precipitation or rain, sometimes hail or sleet, but not a whole lot of snow. It's also prone to tornadoes and occasional hurricanes. You need to know how climate affects agriculture, industry, and tourism here in our state. Our climate is ideal for agriculture. It's really good for growing different things, and it leads to a variety of crops. Our agriculture affects our economy, and it's still our #1 moneymaker. So even with all the industry that's developed in Georgia, agriculture and growing things is still the biggest moneymaker. Climate also attracts industries and businesses to Georgia. There's fewer weather-related incidents and accidents, such as not getting to work because of the snow. That's not really an issue here in Georgia very often. The cost to operate industry is a lot lower because they don't have that extreme weather. And the industries help our economy. They provide jobs for people. They provide goods for us to buy. Climate also attracts tourists to Georgia. These tourists come here. They spend money on hotels. They spend money on tubing down the Chattahoochee or visiting the beach down on Tybee outside of Savannah. That all helps our economy. Our location, our geography, specifically in this world, in regards to all of this, we are over here in the northern and western hemispheres on the continent of North America, okay? In our country, it's another word for nation, we live in the United States of America. Pretty sure you know that by now. And our region is the Southeast. Remember, Georgia Bulldogs just played in the SEC Championship, the Southeastern Conference Championship. So you should be able to remember our region is Southeast. Continent, North America, hemispheres, northern and western. Nation, good grief, United States of America, and our region is the Southeast region. The 5 states that border us are North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee. Again, lots of SEC teams. And we live in the state of Georgia. We have 5 geographical regions here in Georgia. That means that they are different. They are separated based on their geography. The first one is the Appalachian Plateau. That is the very northwestern corner of Georgia, the tag corner, because it also has Tennessee and Alabama. It's a mild climate. Very little agriculture. There's not a lot grown because it's flat-topped mountains and limestone, okay? They provide, their economic contribution is mining, coal, and tourism. Remember we talked about people go to see the gorgeous scenery, to see the limestone formations, to see the leaves change color. That is how they bring money into and support the state of Georgia. Valley and Ridge is right next to it. It's the next northwest region. Same mild climate. They have a little more agriculture, such as apples, like in Ellijay, corn, and wheat. Their economic contribution to our state is the carpet industry there in Dalton, and they also mine as well. They have high ridges and low open valleys. If we look right here, we've got our high ridges and then our low open valleys down here. Our next one in the northeast corner of Georgia is Blue Ridge. All right, its climate is slightly cooler because it's a higher elevation. Think about the mountains. They're a little bit higher. It's going to be a little bit cooler, and it also receives the most precipitation. Very little agriculture because it's mountains. They do provide an economic contribution. Tourism. Think about the people that go to Helen, that go to up to Brasstown Bald, things like that. Mining gold, copper, marble. Anybody who's ever gone to Dahlonega, you've gone to the Blue Ridge, okay? The geography, mountains, right? Beautiful mountains. Referred to the Blue Ridge Mountains because of that mist there makes them look blue. The Piedmont. You are currently sitting in the Piedmont right now. It is central Georgia. It's a slightly warmer climate than those northern regions because we're a little bit lower down here. We have a lot more agriculture, such as soybeans. If you've ever smelled Cargill, you know what I'm talking about. Wheat, corn, poultry, and cattle. We have economic contributions such as natural resources, olive growth, and industry, because what is the big, huge city in the Piedmont? Atlanta. It's the capital of industry here in Georgia and most of the southeast. Okay, geography is the low rolling hills. See, we've got the city and the forests. Our last geographic region for Georgia is the coastal plain. It's down in South Georgia. It is the largest of all of the regions. It is the warmest climate in all of Georgia. It has the most agriculture: peanuts, pecans, corns, onions and corn, and their economic contributions also include industry such as shipyards and lumber, and natural resources and tourism, like we talked about going to the barrier islands down there. Their geography is flatland and they border the Atlantic Ocean. Right there you can see the dunes and you can see all the agriculture. We have 6 physical features here in the state of Georgia. The first one is the Appalachian Mountains. It's a mountain chain beginning in North Georgia. It's found in those 3 northern regions: Appalachian Plateau, Valley and Ridge, and Blue Ridge. Helps provide precipitation. The highest point in Georgia is Brasstown Bald, part of the Appalachian Mountains. It's where the Appalachian Trail begins, and this brings tourists into Georgia who spend money, and that contributes to our economy. Okay. If you see here, it's the Appalachian Mountains. We have the fall line. It is a natural boundary right here in almost the middle of the state between the Piedmont and coastal plain. It's made up of waterfalls. Remember we talked, it exists because there's a higher elevation up in the Piedmont and it's lower down in the coastal plain, so it flows and all the water flows down the waterfalls. It stretches across the state from Columbus to Macon to Augusta. It provides hydroelectricity. Remember, these major cities developed here because that back in the days of horse and wagons and just horseback riding, they couldn't get up those waterfalls very easily, and so they would just settle there because not only was it difficult to get up, but you need a source of water to maintain any kind of town anywhere. Next we have the Chattahoochee River. That is in our backyard. This is what feeds into Lake Lanier. This is what allows us to go tubing up in Helen, to go swimming or water skiing out on Lake Lanier. It keeps going outside of Lake Lanier, keeps going past it, forms the western border of Georgia. So Georgia's on one side, Chattahoochee River, then Alabama, and eventually it empties into the Gulf of Mexico. It supplies water, the water right outside the hall and the drinking fountain, straight out of Lake Lanier. Food, such as fishing, recreation, such as fishing, water skiing, anything like that, and hydroelectricity to Georgians. The water, when it funnels out of the lake into the river, it turns the turbines, and that's what makes the hydroelectricity to help Georgia. It provides tourist spots for fishing and recreation. It becomes difficult to navigate at the fall line because of the significant drop. Next, we have the Savannah River. That is our eastern border with South Carolina. It empties right into the Atlantic Ocean right there at Savannah. It provides Georgians with water, food, transportation, and hydroelectricity similar to the Chattahoochee River. It's also an attraction for fishing and recreation, and it helps with Georgia's economy because the imports and exports can come right in here at Savannah at the mouth of the river, and they can actually travel all the way up to Augusta and then be put on a train or a truck or somewhere to go to the rest of the state or somewhere else in the country. The Barrier Islands. These are a series of islands here along the coast of Georgia. They're part of the coastal plain region, and they separate Georgia from the Atlantic Ocean. They protect Georgia. They protect the mainland from the wind and erosion, from hurricanes, any kind of damage that would come to the coast of Georgia. It hits those barrier islands first. Tourists are attracted, like we talked about. There's St. Simon's Island, there's Tybee Island, there's Jekyll Island. Many of you have been to these different places. There's beautiful beaches to go to. There's sea turtles to go and visit. There's all sorts of things. Cumberland Island we discussed. Nobody lives there. It's complete wildlife refuge that you can go and visit. And then the Okefenokee Swamp. It is 700 square miles of freshwater wetland. It is also in the coastal plain region. It is the largest swamp in North America and home to hundreds of species of plants and animals. It attracts tourists to the coastal plain region. Some people like to go see the alligators and the wild animals, and that's one of the neatest places to go because they have so many different things there. It became protected as a wildlife refuge because of Franklin Roosevelt when he was president. That was one of the places that he created. It's also, before that though, it was a source for timber, for wood, for building things, before it was turned into a refuge. The Choctaw referred to it as the land of the trembling earth. Okay. All right. So water in Georgia. How does that impact our economic growth? We talked about how cities develop on water because they need a way to transport things. They also need drinking water and ways to provide for themselves. Keep going. All right, how did water affect Georgia's historical development? Well, historical development means over the history of time. How did it change? How did Georgia grow? Part of that being because of water. Cities, if you look at the map on the state of Georgia, most of them developed on a river, near a river, somewhere that it is accessible. All right, transportation. There are 4 major modes of transportation here in Georgia. Interstate highways, railroads, our airports, and deep water ports. The highways and interstates intersect throughout Georgia and the U.S. The interstates were actually created in the 1950s by Dwight D. Eisenhower. They bring people and businesses to Georgia. If you think about 985, that's just down the road from us, there are fast food restaurants and gas stations that people stopping through. They may not even be coming to Georgia, but on the way to Florida or South Carolina, they stop and they buy gas or they buy food. That brings people, it brings business, it brings money, and it creates jobs here in Georgia. Railroads, which used to be our dominant transportation in the 1800s, Athens, Augusta, Atlanta, were all created due to railroads. Atlanta specifically because it is not or on a major source of water. Because of all the railroads being there, that is why Atlanta developed. There are 5,000 miles of railroad just in Georgia. It also helps bring people and businesses to the state. Cargo ships, or deep water ports, transport goods to and from Georgia in 2 major seaports, Savannah and Brunswick. Shipping leads to jobs and, again, increased economy. People have to load the ships, they have to drive the ships, they have to unload the ships, they have to truck the stuff from the ship somewhere inland. Okay? And then our airports. Our largest being Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. It is the busiest in the world with 80,000 flights and 7 million passengers per month. Airports bring people and jobs to Georgia. It also stimulates our economy.